done an inspection on these properties last week, and I moved forward that we condemn them.
So all those we started, those meetings, called everybody last time, we already adjudicated we have proper service and continued the meetings with the consent of, the interested persons. I guess we should call it, are there any interested parties here? You're in, your name?
Tiffany Johnson.
Okay.
Okay, Tiff.
So you're asking me to move forward with the condemnation. Ms. Johnson, anything you want to say?
No, I had a chance to look at the property and I did go, the area inside of the property and we did determine what they did.
Yeah. You consent to that then? Okay, all right, so here's what entertain motion.
Okay, got a motion, by Kevin Dale, second by Will. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. I can do that include that we demolish them in 30 days.
Yeah, the typical motion is to condemn and demolish it if they're not demolished within 30 days by the owner. Is that correct? Is that the, yeah, that's what I said it was.
Thank you. Okay, future development. Bill Jean, you got anything? Thank you. Union County Museum. Police Department. Chief?
Yes, sir, right there. All right, as most of the board members know, this is going to include the fire department too, Chief Whiteside. Basically, the state of Mississippi, the governor basically gave $1,000 to the first responders of the high patrol, those guys that work through COVID. And they have come up with a premium pay program to follow suit, basically for the first responders. That'd be law enforcement and firefighters that work through the COVID pandemic. What I have here. What I have here is basically the information packet they sent out. It explains it in detail, kind of how it works. It's basically a reimbursement type thing. But it explains how it works, what it's for, and how it came about, basically. So I introduce this to the board. And basically all the board needs to do is to vote for the resolution to be introduced. It's got to be in the minutes. And then the entity affidavit for us that basically just says we qualify. Now, there's one on the entity affidavit part. I would like to ask both the board to vote on this, but I am going to ask Reagan to make sure that we're in full compliance on the entity affidavit part before we sign anything.
So you're asking for authority to, you're asking for their approval and authority to sign it after I have reviewed it, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Make a motion.
All right, y'all heard the recommendation. Do I have a motion? Kevin Dale, second by William Drew. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think that's going to take care of one of with Chief Whiteside's.
You got anything else, Chief?
Yeah, I got two other items.
All right, come on up and do it now.
So we were able to take off that one on the resolution since the police department handled it for us. We appreciate you guys doing that. The second thing I was looking for is some direction and some leadership kind of commitment or a way we need to handle the holiday realignment and adjustment. Which, are we ready to move on that? How you want to handle that? We're talking about the holiday and the realignment of the holiday pay.
All right, got a motion by Drew. Do I have a second?
What's the motion?
explain a little bit?
Yeah, this is what we've been talking about, and Reagan, this is what we gave you the information on as far as the holiday time and the holiday period.
Yeah, I remember, but you had thrown a proposal out there, and then I drafted something for them, which to my knowledge, they haven't ever sent it to you, so I don't think you've even seen it.
Right.
So I think we're talking apples and oranges.
All right,
So
so,
what I had suggested was after they are happy with it, that they disseminate to you and Chris before we vote on it. So I don't think they should make a motion to approve that without you looking at it. You're asking to approve.
well, what I was doing was asking where we're at, what's our next step, where would we like to head with it?
And Mark, I think the expectation of that was with the new budget coming up, we were gonna talk about it between now and the next meeting
Okay.
to have.
Okay, so we'll table it and just work on it with the new budget?
That's fine. I'm good with that.
All right.
Let me ask this, are y'all ready for me to send it to him and Chris for review?
No.
Not yet? Okay, no, all right.
All right, yeah, that answers my question, so we're good with that. The third thing, the EMS and the ambulance ordinance that the county was working on, they met yesterday, and they decided to table this for, they said 60 to 90 days, but I did actually talk to the board president, he told me, yes, they did decide to table it. I did speak and told them that, we had some concerns, and all I asked was that our concerns were addressed before they did make a commitment or a decision on it, so that they did table it, so we can just table it also.
So,
Okay.
You may want to vote on one thing on that. Kurt Clayton was supposed to call me or vice versa, but we haven't talked. When I talked to Chandler, I think he was under the impression we should set this for a public hearing next month. We don't have a document yet to look at. Obviously, we're going to have to adopt something that corresponds with what the county's doing. They did kick it to next month, but he did suggest we go ahead and vote today to set it for a public hearing. If we change our mind on that, we can back out of it, but I think it might be prudent to go ahead and make that.
Reagan, say that again. Why do we have to have a public hearing for this?
We don't have an actual document there, the county does, they have sent us theirs. They're suggesting that we need to enter into an agreement with them. That's just actually Chandler saying that they did a public hearing, because I haven't looked into this, I'm not sure I can answer your question. Honestly, I'm not sure what kind of, what will be passed as a contract or a resolution.
So Mark, there is a way that we can just leave it the same, or it's the way we do things now.
The way everything is set up now, we can continue to operate just like we are. That's why I was waiting on them to make their decision. The only thing I asked was that our concerns that, were addressed, that, we can, whatever Reagan thinks we can do, but they did decide to hold off and table it for further discussion.
So we probably don't need to have a public hearing till we know what we're,
Well, for sure.
For sure.
But we wouldn't be having a public hearing today.
yeah, I know it.
But let's put that to the end of the meeting, let me text Chandler and find out what was it. It makes a difference if it's a contract ordinance or resolution, but I'm not sure what it is.
Okay.
That's all I have.
All right, thank you too. Building inspector, Eric, where'd you go? Should sit on the front, it wouldn't take us so long.
I emailed the monthly report. At the zoning meeting, we had a request from South Investment for a subdivisional approval on South Central. It was approved. Had a request from Crosswalk Free Will Baptist Church at 510 Highway 30 West for a sign variance. It was approved. Had a request from Greg Morton, 407 Manchester, for a setback variance and accessory building. It was denied. The zoning board recommended that the Board of Aldermen pass the Albany next zoning plan. The alderman shall decide with or without cannabis. On the code enforcement side, I need to set a public hearing for September the 6th to condemn 1300 South Central.
Okay, did y'all hear the condemnation? Got a motion by Will, to have the public hearing. Have a second? Second by Kevin Dale. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Then motion carries.
Thank
you. Okay, Starling Avenue, Highway 30 update, there is none. The consent agenda, unless somebody wants to call anything, so right here will stand as approved. And that's the normal, monthly bills that we pay. So let's move on to the agenda. Is this,
Mayor?
Yes.
Got all about it.
well, okay. I thought I talked to you enough today.
We're gonna get these bills paid, people gonna be looking for it, maybe. First item is pay request number 8 for Roberts Construction for a municipal building. That's the amount of $245,505.
What's the will? Kevin Dale, motion, I have a second. Second by Drew, Keith. Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Got a pay request from KJAX Construction for the Carter Street lift station that we're, rehabbing, doing rehab work on. That's part of the USDA project. $267,262.08.
I got a motion by Will to accept that, I have a second. Second by Parks. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Hey, we got pay request number 2 to UBank Construction on the, construction of the new Mossville Drive. I'm not sure what to do with this line here. Is it battle through it? The Mossville Drive pump station, that's the one next to the Napa store. And this is the project to get rid of the pipe over the river. $185,877, and this is to be paid out of ARPA funds.
What's the will of the board? Motion by Keith, second by Will. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Maybe the other item I have, we've had several sewer lift stations that we've had to do substantial rehab work on. They weren't necessarily big enough to get an outside contractor in where we would get people in to do the work on them. But these qualify under the ARPA funds. The total on that is $65,682.45. We'd like to reimburse the sewer department through the ARPA funds for this rehabilitation work.
Okay, motion by Will, I have a second. Second by Parks. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, let's go to regular agenda.
Let me go ahead and get this out of the way. We don't have to do anything today. That's an ordinance and we'll have to have it in written. Well, EMS, we won't be talking about that. Okay.
All right, anybody got any update on storm shelter discussion? Okay, item B is adopt amendment District 2 Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan. I think everybody should have a plan and brought it in, so, need a motion to approve that. Motion by Kevin Dale, second by Keith. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Authority to publish public notice of the public hearing on budget year 9/30/2023. Motion by Kevin Dale, second by Will. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. All right, let's move to item D is a MOU for finance House Bill number 1353, which Representative Creekmore got as far as street improvements, but there's several things we can use it on. but, it's for $250,000, so we need to vote to accept that with an MOU. Motion by Key, second by Parks. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries. Item E is to approve request for cash for, number 13 request for $66,458.83 for the Fusion Furniture CDB project. You want to say anything? Okay. Got a motion by Will to have a second. Second by Keith. Any other question or discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? I can't see y'all, and throw your hand up high.
You want to swap mics, see if that'll help?
Yeah, but
All I gotta do is click this on.
yeah, I know it, but I don't think we'll try. What's that?
Put it that way. It was on when you got it.
You see green? Yeah, but see it. Get the button spot. All right, let's move to item G, is approved pay request furniture project for, that's Fusion, I would assume, right? For $11,645.50 for Elliott and Britt Engineering. Motion by Kevin Dale, I have a second. Second by Drew. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried.
We do all these at once, yeah, just call on.
Okay, the first, we're gonna do these all together, but the first one is a is a Albany tax exempt for Cooper Electrical. There's two of those, for Fusion Furniture, for Albany Industries, Southern Motion, and Metal Impact. And this is normal tax exemption. Looks like Cooper Electrical's 9 years.
They didn't file one last year, so they filed for the remaining 9 years.
Okay.
For those items.
Got a motion by Will to have a second. Second by Parks. Any other questions or discussion?
I got another question, I think, but if on here, it's approving for a company and their name is not what it is on this sheet for the minutes, do we need to, does it need to be right? When it's Metal Impact is no longer Metal Impact. Well, and it may be, they just changed recently, so I just didn't know if that mattered.
They said that they actually prepared that, and that's the same application they filed with the Department of Revenue, so.
So for the minutes, okay.
They've
Making
prepared
sure. So,
Okay, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carried. Okay, where's that list? Eric, you got the list? Okay, it looks like Kathy Chisholm was first on the list. Yeah, there'll be a 3-minute, and they'll, just where you gonna put that? Okay. So we'll start when you start talking.
All right, thank you. First, I want to say thank you to the Alderman and Mayor Kent for all the hard work that you've done, because I know it's not always easy. and for opting out of marijuana within the first 90 days, to at least give us an opportunity to do a little bit of research. There's been some misconception about the language in Senate Bill 2095. Some seem to think that if New Albany opts out, doctors, nurses, nurse practitioners, optometrists, and PA in New Albany can't give a letter of recommendation for a marijuana card. This simply isn't true. Senate Bill 2095, as sent to the governor and signed into law, clearly states doctors, nurse practitioners, optometrists, and PA practicing in the state of Mississippi with the required training to recommend the legal marijuana card. Hold on, I lost my place. Marijuana card can legally write a letter of recommendation for cannabis to their patients. That includes doctors, nurse practitioners, optometrists, and PA in cities and counties that have opted out. Once this letter of recommendation is written to a patient, it is then given to the Mississippi Department of Health, and they make the final decision to allow you the cannabis card or not. So it's not like if we opt out in New Albany that no doctor or nurse practitioner or optometrist or PA cannot give you a letter of recommendation. They can. So that was one misconception. The second misconception, some believe that persons with a marijuana card can't possess or use marijuana in a city or county that has opted out. Also is not true. As long as you have a legal medical marijuana card, you can possess and use marijuana in the state of Mississippi, even in the city or county that has opted out. So I want everybody to understand that. It's not like we're trying to keep anybody from getting the marijuana. We're not trying to keep you from getting it. If anybody needs it medically, it's a 10-minute drive to Blue Springs. With all due respect, marijuana should not be about the money. If this holds true, our elected officials won't disagree with allowing other areas to try the outcome of growing and dispensing first. So if it's not about the money, there shouldn't be a problem with giving us a little bit longer. Let some of the other cities around test this and see if it goes uphill or downhill, because once you opt in, you cannot opt out. That should be your first red flag. Any person truly needing medical marijuana won't mind purchasing just 10 minutes away in Blue Springs. This is a very important, irreversible, and please take note, irreversible decision to be made. Once they get you, you're there. You do not opt out. You're done. You'll be in forever. I don't care what it does to your city. I don't care how fast it goes downhill. You're just going to go downhill with the ride because you can't get out. Please don't make a hasty decision. If this program goes well in other areas without all of the possible negatives, then come back with a town hall meeting, just like you're doing today, to opt in, because you can opt in at any time, any given time. Lots of people have worked extremely hard to make New Albany an absolutely beautiful and most desirable city that I personally and many others are proud to say I live in New Albany, Mississippi. Thank you for allowing me this time to express my concerns. Thank y'all.
Okay, thank you. Randy Robbins. Thank you, Tim and Board, for letting us have this time to share how we feel about it. But as Kathy well stated, everyone here knows that we're not here or trying to stop medical marijuana. It's a done deal, that vote is settled. What we are here is to ask you guys, ask the mayor, the Board of Aldermen, to opt out of the ability to grow and sell marijuana in the city limits of New Albany. We know that you can postpone it. You can look, as Kathy said, in other areas. There's no one here, though, that, I don't think there's anybody in this room that doesn't believe that medical marijuana will be recreational marijuana very fast. If not this coming year, the next, but it won't be long.
and all the problems that go with it. I know that she covered so many of the things that I wanted to, that I had to cover, which that's good. But if we couldn't cover the opioid crisis in all these small communities in America, how in the world are we going to police this thing? Nobody has the resources. We have a great police force, we have a great county sheriff's department. There's no way to keep up with this, especially when we do it the way the bill was written. And the cash part gives me a serious hard time. But let me say this too. I want to throw this in. I know the vote sale, medical marijuana is here, but I want to say this. I just recently retired, and in some of the areas where we work, there was legal medical marijuana and recreational as well. There was both. But I saw one particular person, friend, co-worker, whatever you want to call it. He didn't need medical marijuana in his own opinion. He would tell you that. But it was so easily to get a card. He got one. And in his life, it just started going downhill. His attendance to work suffered greatly. It suffered to the point he should have been terminated, but he wasn't. His kids, their personal hygiene went down. Their school attendance went down. They quit going to church. He let his life go. Maybe he got too involved in medical marijuana. I don't know. I'm not a marijuana smoker, so I don't know. But maybe he got too involved in it. But regardless of what he did, it destroyed everything in his life. He was so undone. As I traveled and worked, most of the time I was in New York or Connecticut or up in that area, most of the time, or on the other side. But one thing, when they would come here, they loved New Albany. I'm talking about the people that were above me. The global center was New York City. The people that were above me loved this area. They'd get me to ship them on gels, shrimp and grits all the time. We sent it to them FedEx. They loved it. They came here, though, they gave us a nickname of Mayberry. And they all kept telling me, man, what a great thing y'all got down here. But just recently, the same guys read or learned that we had voted in medical marijuana in the state of Mississippi. And they called me and said, what in the world are you doing? Y'all don't do anything. And I said, I know, it is what it is, but now it's here. But the point I want to make is we're 30 miles from Ole Miss. We're an hour and 15 minutes from Mississippi State. We're 65 miles from Memphis. We have a prime opportunity. Instead to focus our resources on bringing more marijuana into the county, we could bring the retirement community into the county. Everybody out in Portland, Seattle, West Coast, they're wanting to come this way. They may not come to Mississippi, but they might. But we have a golden opportunity to do this, to lure them here. And when they come, they bring their money with them. They don't have to make it, it's made. They're going to retire. I know I'm out of time, but I just want to say this. We have a great time. We have a great community. I personally believe that this will take us down. It will be what takes us down. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Randy. Scott Dunn, you're next.
I hope I'm not the only one here with this story, but this is just my personal story. I want y'all to know how this affected and helped me. I didn't intend to be the poster child for this issue. If it'll help one person, I'll be glad to do it. I was diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer. That means it's spread. In my case, it's in my bones. And this is a life-changing and a life-ending disease. And part of my treatment is chemotherapy. And if you know anybody that's had that, they'll describe it in varying degrees of misery. So after about 4 treatments, I tried medical marijuana, and it worked better than I ever thought it would. I was still weak on the worst days, but it's a native plant, native weed. I saw it walking along the trails in Nebraska, but this thing made me feel like myself again during this terrible time. It also gave me relief from the cancer that was making my bones hurt. The added benefit was the
relief it gave me from anxiety, with a diagnosis like that. I mean, just feel with anxiety every day, but it really gave me a lot of relief. It improved my physical and mental health. So I'd like to spend my remaining time enjoying my family, making memories, not knocked out by heavy painkillers or opioids. I know some of you don't want it in the town, most of you, but I respect that. This is my town too. As my condition progresses, my world's going to become a lot smaller, and so will the world of my caregivers. So I think it'll be a benefit to have it here, for those who need it. That's all I've got to say about that. God bless y'all.
Bill Kitchens.
Good afternoon, gentlemen, and ladies and gentlemen out in the audience. I've done a lot of research this week on medical marijuana, and I've read several dozens of pages of the Mississippi Medical Cannabis Act. I'm like Scott Dunham. I'm here to tell you that I want us to opt in. I think we ought to have a dispensary here. I'm not so much about the cultivation, the testing. And there's some avenues of this bill you don't have to approve to be able to do. Testing is one of them. I think they're going to have a testing facility in Holly Springs, actually. I heard that today. But Mississippi is the 37th state that passed the Medical Marijuana Act in some form or fashion. That's 74% of the states in the United States. In November of 20, 69% of Mississippi voters that voted for the medical cannabis program. And as Kathy has brought up, I'll go to Senate Bill 2095. That passed the House by 103 to 113, which was 88% of the House of Representative members voting positively. And in Ms. Chisholm's Senate, it was approved by 46 to 4 with one abstention. So that was a 90% approval rate. And to me, that's just my way of thinking, that's your mandate to opt in. The voters said yes. That's the way I see it. But on a personal note, I have a daughter who has seizures, been having them about 15 years, and we've tried every seizure drug that man makes. Might have even concocted a few at home, I don't know, but none of them work very well. Her pain is unrequited, and this medical marijuana may be a relief to her. And many of you know my wife Terry, who died on me in 2013, but we got her back alive again, but the time without oxygen to her brain caused a noxic brain injury, and she has chronic pain that's we've tried about every pain medicine there is. She's had nerve ablations in her knees to try to relieve the pain. None of that has worked. And another thing we have here, we have a great cancer center at Baptist Hospital. And as Scott has already related, medical marijuana has proven in study after study to be a great pain reliever, nausea relief with our cancer patients. And also another thing, I hadn't thought about until I sit back there tonight listening, and I do appreciate everybody that's had several conversations about this, because there's been some meetings that haven't been quite so, what shall I say, calm. But we have at least 4 nursing homes here, and many of those patients will probably be candidates. Now, talking about candidates, just one second. By the way, just for the record, in the vote last year for cannabis, there was 2,157 young residents voted yes. against 1745 against, so we had a 55-45 majority for. But everybody knows somebody here is I'm out of time too. Cancer, Parkinson's disease, Crohn's disease, autism, the list goes on, chronic pain, seizures, which my daughter has, and we haven't had any luck doing that. But anyway, my opinion, I think we are, or I'm not so much about the growing or the testing or the hauling or all the other aspects of it, but I do believe we deserve to have.
Okay, looks like Robert Vale is next.
Thank you, Council and Mayor, good citizens. My name is Robert Vale. I'm a family nurse practitioner. I work in family practice and urgent cares, and probably the majority of the people in this room do not know that medical cannabis has been available for 36 years in this country in the form of Marinol. It's a pill that you can get. It comes in 2.5, 5, and 10 milligrams. And my first job out of nursing school was on the cancer floor in North Mississippi Hospital in Tupelo. And the entire time I was on that floor, we never used Marinol because it was not that effective for most people. Okay, so there's a lot of hype behind medical cannabis that is not true. Last week, my wife is also a nurse practitioner. A lot of y'all know Gina Vale. We met with 275 nurse practitioners at a conference for continuing education classes ranging from metabolic issues, women's health, orthopedic injuries, and another part of the planned curriculum was 3 hours of medical cannabis instruction, given in part by Dr. Daniel Edney, who's replaced Dr. Dobbs as the Chief Medical Officer of the Mississippi State Department of Health. He expressed concerns for many reasons. For one, devastating effects on developing brains of the fetus and young children when exposed intentionally or unintentionally. He also reiterated several times that cannabis is an illegal drug federally, regardless of our state laws, and contributes to many confounding situations. Another presenter was Phyllis Johnson, the Executive Director of the Mississippi Board of Nursing. In her words, she wouldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. Okay, we did learn that we as providers, we're required to access on the website the Mississippi Prescription Monitoring Program to check if our patients have been issued any controlled substances. All right, and so what are the names that we see when we look at that? We see things like Xanax and Percocet and Neurontin and a lot of drugs that are necessary for people's conditions. But when it pops up that somebody's been issued medical cannabis, it's going to come up with names like Girl Scout cookies, Bruce Banner, the Incredible Hulk. It's going to come up with names like Blue Dream and Green Crack. That's what we're going to have to look them up to see what the actual content of the marijuana in these pills and, gummies and the stuff that they'll smoke or however they ingest it. And if this was a legitimate thing, it would have a name like Marinol, and which is already legal and in use everywhere across this country. So this whole thing is a bunch of hype, and all it is a gateway for recreational use. And so when people can see their Bruce Banner, this is off of medicaldoctors.com, by the way. The marijuana strain appears like mild-mannered Bruce Banner, but quickly turns into a green monster. That's the way they want to promote this stuff. So if it was for real, then it would have a legitimate name.
Thank you, Robert. I think next is Tonya Harrington.
Yes. I graduated from the University of Mississippi in 1985 with a degree in biological science and chemistry. I have studied medicinal plants and their properties for many years. I have also taught my students. I'm a former teacher. I've also taught my students about medicinal plants and have used resources throughout the county, other professionals to come into my classroom to also teach about those properties. On November 3rd, 69% of the Mississippi voters went to the polls and cast their ballots in favor of enacting a medical cannabis program. 74% of the voters voted for Initiative 65, rejecting Initiative 65A, an alternative program placed on the ballot by our lawmakers. Then the Supreme Court threw out not only Initiative 65, but also decided to throw out the entire state's ballot initiative process. The Senate passed Senate Bill 2095 in a 46-5 vote on January 13th, and the House followed suit with a 104-14 vote on January 19th. The two chambers came together and formed a conference committee to sign off on the final version of the Medical Cannabis Act in a landslide vote of 103-13 in the House and 46-4 with one abstention in the Senate. I know you've heard this several times. On January 26th, the Mississippi Legislature gave its final approval to the Mississippi Medical Cannabis Act. Senator Kevin Blackwell sponsored the Mississippi Medical Cannabis Act. He did this to restore the voters' will, which means the will of the voters, in Mississippi by creating a medical cannabis program. Governor Tate Reeves signed this bill into law on February 2nd, 2022. Now, I have read this bill 4 times, from beginning to end. Never in this bill do I see or read the word recreation. I do not find it. And I have looked and looked. Okay, last week I did something that I do. You see me a lot. I've got a legal pad because at my age I have to write down notes. And I sat down one night and I looked at the 22 medical conditions that qualified for medical cannabis. Put them on the left-hand side of my notepad. And then I sat there, and for 45 minutes, I thought of the people that I knew at the present time that were experiencing this qualifying illness. I also thought of the people that we've lost over the last year that could have benefited from medical cannabis if they could have gotten it. And then I thought about the ones now that could also benefit. I came up with 56 people in 45 minutes. That's friends, that's family. Some of the conditions are cancer, which have touched all our lives. Some are Alzheimer's, touched a lot of our lives, our families, our parents. One of the qualifying conditions that, one more thing. As a school teacher, one more thing. One thing that stood out to me was autism. 1 in 38 children right now in the United States are diagnosed with autism, and I have worked with several of them. And I think this would be beneficial, and I thank you for your time.
Okay, Mike Kurt, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor and Board of Aldermen, for allowing me to speak as a business owner here in New Albany on my opposition to growing, processing, and dispensing of marijuana in our city. My company provides landscape services throughout Northeast Mississippi and employs over 50 team members with an annual payroll in excess of $1.5 billion As you know, small businesses are the backbone of our economy. We pride ourselves in providing good paying jobs with great benefits to our employees so they can provide for their families. Our employees are from here, they spend their money here. We could have headquartered our national franchise business anywhere in Northeast Mississippi, but we chose New Albany. We chose New Albany for many reasons. It's always been a great place to raise a family. There's a great sense of community pride. It's a safe place. We have a great education system. We have excellent city services, healthcare, strong financial institutions, job opportunities, and many attractions that other cities our size only dream of. This is a testament to the cooperation of civic leaders, entrepreneurs, economic development organizations, industry, and our local government. We applaud your contributions to making New Albany what it is today. We ask that you do not tarnish your legacy with a decision to opt into this program. There is no upside to such a decision. One of our mottos at U.S. Lawns is improving lives, improving communities. And like other small businesses in New Albany, we support local businesses, collect sales tax on our services, pay property tax on our assets, donate services, and give generously to our schools, community events, charities, and civic organizations. We believe in leaving something better than we found it, and we ask the same from you. We love our employees, they're family to us. And our first responsibility is to provide a safe working environment for them, our customers, and everyone we come in contact with while traveling to our customers' properties and performing our work. We're a drug-free workplace and require each applicant to pass a pre-employment drug screen. We also drug test post-accident and upon any suspicion of drug or alcohol use. For the first time in 23 years, we're turning away work right now, and that's due to a shortage of workers. We all know there's a domino effect to that. I realize this is a national problem, but many applicants cannot pass the pre-employment drug screen, with marijuana being the primary illegal drug that causes them to fail the test. We cannot and will not lower our commitment to providing a drug-free workplace and a safe work environment. We realize that the more accessible it becomes, the more this problem will be magnified. As job creators, we ask you to stay opted out of this program permanently. Thank you so much.
Ms. Mary Tate, you're next.
Well, as you can see, I don't have notes, and I'm probably not gonna talk. I think I'm the oldest person here because Kevin Dale and Keith could be my sons and the rest of my grandchildren. But I want to talk from my heart. We have a wonderful, small southern town here. And if we can't do anything to better it, let's don't do anything at all. I know we don't want anything in downtown area, but I also live in the city limits. I don't want anything on South Glenville Road. I don't want anything on North Glenville Road. That's where the farm is. And I dearly feel for the people that do this. And I'm not against medical marijuana, but I don't want it grown here, and I don't want it cultivated here. And if people really need it, they can get it. But our medical profession, a lot of them are not going to sign off on it. They're going to have a liability. And I just beg you, for the sake of our children and your grandchildren, let's let people go to Blue Springs to get it, and let's not work it here in New Albany.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Scott Maxon, looks like you're next.
Chief, could you help me just a minute, please? Sir. Before I start speaking, I want to address Scott Dunn. This has nothing to do with addressing the board. Thank you for your service that you've done to this city and the improvements you've done to this city. And mine and my family's prayers have been with you and are still with you and your family. You can give one of these to each one of the certain board, please. I'm giving them something, and I'm going to go through this real quick for everybody else here. First, I want to state that I am not against medical marijuana if it's used medically and dispensed medically. An 8-hour class dispensary to dispense it is not medical marijuana. Medical marijuana goes through a pharmacist or a doctor pharmacy to be prescribed. Nobody here gets their medicines from a dispensary that's not a doctor or pharmacy. My question for the city, because this is a question and answer part, I think.
You want these passed out, please?
Yes, yeah, each one of them, please. What does opting in for manufacturing and dispensing medical marijuana do to benefit the city of New Albany? What is the projected revenue for the city versus what the state's revenue from our sales tax is? I can go ahead and tell you theirs is 5 times more beneficial for them than what the city would take in. Okay, so to me, being a business owner, that's a terrible deal. Why are we working for the state? I mean, we work for them enough, why do we have to keep giving to them? Was manufacturing and dispensing clearly defined for our city on the state ballot? No, it was not. It was a state ballot. If it's strictly medicinal, why is it taxed and non-health insurable? Why is it not dispensed by a doctor or pharmacy instead of a person that takes an 8-hour course? And are all the head of our city departments in for this? The chief of police, the chief of the fire departments, all of our first responders that will be dealing with this. Does if any of y'all are a business owner, do you want it manufactured and dispensed next to your business? I can speak that I don't. I don't know if anybody else here does, or that's fine too. But the majority of business owners that I've spoken to, which is over 40, are against it. And on the back of those sheets, you'll see a list of 20 or so businesses that are definitely against opting in for manufacturing and dispensing medical marijuana. Now, like I say, the revenue that's generated from opting in will not benefit the salary of one police officer. And the way I understand it, we've got a shortage of officers right now that we can't fill. The complexity that comes with this puts handcuffs on them. If you own a gun and you've got a medicinal card, you can't legally own that gun. You can't have it in your possession and carry it with you according to the federal law. This has nothing to do with state. This is above state law. This is a federal law. You can't go down here to 2A Armaments if you've got a medicinal card and buy a gun. Now, it's not hard for me to figure out. This is a common sense question. This isn't about is it good or is it bad. It's just a real common sense question. If it's available to get, it's not going to hold somebody up from getting their medicinal marijuana. Why are we opting in? Why are we even considering opting in? I think the Board of Aldermen, before they vote in, should address the citizens of the town and to explain to us the benefits, because our local senator tells me there's 2 benefits: revenue and the people voted for it statewide. If that's the only 2 benefits versus I can come up with 100 more negative, why are we opting in? Why are we going to be a guinea pig on the front? Let everybody else opt in and let's see what happens to them. 65% of the municipalities in another state that were opted in have opted out. Because they had the option to opt in or opt out. We don't have that. Once we're in, like Kathy said, we're in. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Dr. Shane Scott is next.
Thank you guys for allowing me to speak tonight, to take a few minutes to express my concerns about medical marijuana dispensaries in our city. First, I do not favor having dispensaries and growing facilities in our city. One of the primary roles of city government, in my opinion, is to add value to our city. And New Albany has done this well with a vibrant downtown sportsplex, park along the river, and other industries that attract people. When considering ways we can add value, allowing medical marijuana dispensaries would not be one of those opportunities. There is always competing interest between adding value and building revenue. And as a business owner, I understand these challenges. Revenue generation is central to healthy local government. There's no doubt that allowing marijuana dispensaries and growing facilities would generate some revenue. But the track record of our city has been to add value, which will innately generate revenue. This is where our focus should stay. Value drives revenue. Adding value through continued infrastructure improvement, expanding our sportsplex, adding the aquatic facility that was talked about at the last board meeting would likely increase revenue without the concern of a negative impact that Scott's just mentioned. In addition, I do not want a dispensary or a growing facility near our office or the land that we own. I'm concerned that it would negatively affect the value of our investment. Secondly, in my opinion, not allowing these establishments in our cities would have minimal impact on access to those who could choose to use medical marijuana. In an effort to educate myself on the potential benefits and harms of medical marijuana, I attended the 8-hour continuing education course sponsored by the Mississippi Department of Health and the Mississippi State Medical Association about 4 weeks ago in Jackson. The course was designed to give providers the mandatory training needed in order to become a certifying provider for medical cannabis. I left the meeting confirmed in my initial presumptions. We don't know how the medical cannabis fits into our treatment options. The Mississippi law allows numerous chronic conditions to be certified as a diagnosis that would qualify for use. It would seem that you'd be hard-pressed to find a chronic condition that would not qualify. However, there are only 3 conditions that have even the smallest amount of evidence of possibility benefiting from medical cannabis. The first one is neuropathic chronic pain, chemotherapy-induced nausea, vomiting, and certain muscle spasticity symptoms. The majority of the previous studies concur that there is currently weak evidence regarding its clinical effectiveness for long-term use. Furthermore, these studies today are predominantly limited to a small sample size, and the majority do not differentiate between medical and non-medical cannabis usage. Duration of the trials and limitations in blinding and also are significant limitations. We have all just come through rough seas of the COVID-19 pandemic. You and I both know many remedies were tried in order to treat and prevent the disease. High-dose zinc, vitamin C, vitamin D, immune packs. The main potential harm of these agents was their potential cost. Just like marijuana, many will testify that they helped, and I cannot argue their point. However, now we have data indicating that the substances that was tried for COVID showed no benefit in reducing severity of disease or the likelihood of contracting COVID-19. Herein lies the problem and the difference. Because marijuana is a Schedule I drug, it cannot be tested in trials. Other Schedule I drugs like heroin, LSD, bath salts. Schedule I drugs are those that have the following characteristics according to the United States Drug Enforcement Agency. The drug or other substance has a high potential for abuse. The drug or other substance has no currently acceptable medical treatment use in the U.S., and it has a lack of safety data. According to federal law, no prescriptions may be written for Schedule I substances, and they are not readily available for clinical use. Please understand, in the state of Mississippi, when you go to a provider to receive a certification of medical marijuana, It is not being prescribed. The provider is indicating, number one, that you have a qualifying condition under the state law, and two, the provider documents that you have tried other means and they believe that marijuana might be helpful. But as I mentioned earlier, there's no evidence that marijuana is helpful in all but 3 conditions. In addition, we as providers have no idea how much to tell you to take, nor in what form to take it in. Each substance is absorbed differently, an edible, capsule, or gummy, smoked, or food item. But because we don't know how much to prescribe, how much do we indicate you can have a month? If you don't use it all, how likely are you going to share it with a friend like your leftover amoxicillin for your sinus infection? So as the largest outpatient clinic in our city, IMPC has about 100 patients with one of those 3 diagnoses. And we have weak data as to whether that would benefit them. So this may give you a sense of the amount of population that would be affected by not having a dispensary within the city limits. I would ask that you prohibit dispensaries and growing processing facilities in our city. Let's focus our continued success on value that generates revenues for our citizens. Thank you.
Okay, next is Terry Young.
Yes, sorry, I'll be brief. I just wanted to speak from personal experience. Many of you know me. Many of you know what I do for a living. I'm somewhat busy, to say the least. I work an extremely large amount. Very involved with my kids in all of their activities and everything they do. In 2015, I had a hunting accident and shot in the neck with a 708 left pole about the size of a softball. I believe I'm one of the 100 patients that Dr. Scott was talking about, being a patient of his that would qualify for medical marijuana. I have severe neuropathy in my left arm from that accident. For 2 years, I tried every medication that was prescribed to me by Dr. Scott and other doctors. I had multiple nerve blocks done to try to prevent the pain. It's a severe burning pain, along with a pain that feels like you just put a hammer at all of my fingers and my wrist and my elbow, destroyed my ulnar nerve that runs down my arm. Anyway, after 2 years in sleeping for an average of 2.5 hours a night at the most, I'm not a suicidal person, but I had to tell myself every night that I went to bed and close my eyes. Don't open your eyes because you'll see the clock and you won't have gone to sleep. It's going to be the next day and you got to get up and go to work and provide for your family. I'm not a suicidal person, but I had to tell myself that every day for years. In 2016, like many of you here, I had a lot of friends that dabbled in marijuana when they were in high school. I never did. I never did an illicit drug of any kind. Not pills, not marijuana, not anything. In 2016, I was desperate. I tried marijuana with a group of my friends, and I slept for 8 hours that night. I woke up and I cried because I didn't know what it felt like to feel rested. For 2 years, I was in miserable pain. And marijuana is something that I have to use every day of my life, and I have since 2016. And I have to do it illegally. I don't like to break the law. I don't want to be someone that is breaking the law. I want to be able to get up and go to work and create opportunities for people to have jobs and to be able to raise my family, provide for my family, and not be miserable. To be able to just function as a human being. As a business owner in this town, we own businesses, we own property. before the board had ever considered doing anything. As a landlord, we automatically knew, they're not gonna pass rules, we're gonna have our own rules. If someone wants to come lease one of our buildings, we're not gonna let it be a free-for-all. I don't think these gentlemen up here would let it be a free-for-all. I started coming to Board of Aldermen meetings in 2010. I've been to 194 of them, counting tonight. Unfortunately, I'm usually here with very little company from the general public. I really appreciate the amount of caring and effort that people have went into to show up tonight. But we should do about more things than just this. We should do about more things than alcohol when it was a vote. You know, I never did a drug in my life until 2016 when I was a grown man with grown children and I was desperate. But I drank alcohol when I was a kid. I don't know anyone that's tried marijuana that tried it before they tried alcohol. There are a lot of arguments that can be made about it being a gateway or this or that, but used properly, medical marijuana is real, and it has real results. I couldn't do what I do from a work standpoint and being a father and supporting my kids the way I do if I did not have the ability to lay my head down and rest at night. And the only way I can is through the use of that medicine. I wake up without an alarm clock. I work 65 plus hours a week, every week of my life. I've never missed a baseball game, and I'm not going to miss the volleyball game at 7 o'clock tonight. I may not go home until midnight because I still have work to do. But I'm able to do that and live my life because of medical marijuana, and that is the only reason. I wish it wasn't, but it is. And I would hate to see anyone else be denied a life, because that's what it is. That's what it's given me. It's given me a life. I would hate to see someone denied that because we ignored a majority. Yes, there needs to be some rules. Y'all need to set them and enforce them. Y'all are good at that. I've seen y'all do it 194 times. And I just want to express my appreciation for y'all and let y'all know that regardless of what y'all do, I believe in y'all and y'all's decision, and I think we all are in good hands with these people.
And the last one on the list is Jerry Shipperdecker.
Mayor Kent, we skipped one, Bill Thurman, he was number 5 on the list.
You live in the city?
Yes, sir. Right behind Walmart.
All right, well, I'm sorry.
That's okay, thank you.
Yeah, come on up, Mr. Thurman.
I'd like to sincerely thank this body for the opportunity to address it here. It's greatly appreciated. You know, it's heartrending hearing some of these stories, and my heart goes out to anyone who has need for medication of any type. And we might differ as to what form it should take and how it should be accessed, how should they be able to get it. But we can differ that I hope as to the fact that they do need relief, and it's a wonderful thing if they can get it. But the thing is, we will already have legal marijuana in Mississippi now and in Union County. Now, to access it, it's going to be as far away as Blue Springs. That's only about, 8 miles away or 10 minutes. But now we may ask us to do something else, something beyond that. Now we're being asked to take, you're being asked to take a much more serious step, in my view. And I would like to ask you a question. I think I asked it one time before. What if the people had been asked to vote on whether they would like pot shops, marijuana processing facilities, and marijuana growing facilities in their midst, in their neighborhoods? How would they have voted, and how would they react to having them in the neighborhoods? Think about what your constituents care about. They care about crime, they want a safe neighborhood, and they especially want their children to be safe. They care about the neighborhoods and don't want the home values to go south. They They don't want to live in a smelly neighborhood, which also drives down property values and their quality of life. Now, I formed an opinion from studying the issue of what has happened in neighborhoods in other areas in which they have been placed. And what I've learned is not favorable. On many of the websites that the marijuana industry and marijuana promoters have put online sound great. No problem at all, if you listen to them. But you look at what the police have to say, and you get a significantly different story. I won't go into all the details. I think we've heard some of that already. But I'd like to mention one thing. These places have a terrible odor. The town of Taunton, Massachusetts, is an example. 39 miles out of Boston, had a great deal of concern about a proposed marijuana and cultivation site. They desired to locate in their city of slightly over 50,000 residents. Why were they concerned? The concern was the terrible odor that these facilities emit. If you've ever spent a considerable time in liberal Boston area, as I have, you know that they will tolerate a great many nutty ideas there. But even they don't want these stinky facilities in their area. Why should we? My question to you is this: why the rush? Why not wait until we can see how it all pans out in other areas? We've been asked to buy a pig in a poke. Why be rushed into this? I know some can make money out of it, but why be rushed into it? With all the opposition to it, it's not going to work out well for any of us. When the people realize what's happened to them, and this thing doesn't go well, you can figure out who's really going to win. All I want to say is, please reconsider this. Think about it seriously. How it's going to impact everybody involved, in addition to this body here. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Once again, thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. All right, David Silverdeck, it looks like you're.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. Bill Thurman and I are both old men. I think Bill gets around with better than I do, so I commend him for that. Why are we still talking about marijuana? The longer it goes on, the more I wonder why we are still having such a brawl about it. Is marijuana a great evil, or is it a great good thing, the greatest medicine to come along since penicillin? Two questions for you. How many in this room have eaten bacon or ground beef or steak recently? Raise your hands. A lot of vegetarians here. Most of you have had some red meat or bacon. How many of you have eaten any refined sugar in the last few weeks? Coca-Cola or cake or ice cream, whatever. Me too. It's been proven regularly that regular eating saturated fat and sugar contributes to obesity, heart disease, strokes, even cancer. Every year, about 2 million Americans die of these diseases. Every one of you has lost someone that you love to heart disease or cancer. Yet we keep on eating red meat and sugar. Is marijuana ever harmful? There is some evidence that marijuana can trigger mental illnesses in some folks, but the evidence is very scanty. Not one of you can name a single person who has ever died from using marijuana and only marijuana. Not one. That a couple million of us die of eating red meat and sugar. And all those are legal. And alcohol too, which I also enjoy. Yet we keep on eating saturated fat and sugar with little thought. Is marijuana bad for you? Probably a little bit bad in some instances. but the harm it does is very small compared to fat and sugar. The second question is marijuana a good thing? There's strong evidence that medical marijuana is good for relieving pain, for relieving anxiety, for helping with nausea and cancer victims. We heard a little bit about that this evening. Everyone in this room believes that marijuana and its byproducts should be allowed for medical care. Of the 8 or 9 people who've spoken against legalized marijuana, all of them agree that it might have some medical benefits. I believe Dr. Scott is not quite on that, but everybody else agreed that it is useful for some diseases. Even our state senator, Senator Chisholm, says that she is in favor of medical marijuana. She favored a medical marijuana bill that was proposed in the most recent session of the legislature, but she stridently opposes marijuana, the marijuana bill that did become law. I submit to you that that is splitting a very, very fine hair. Is medical marijuana a bad thing? Not bad at all when compared to many substances we use every day that are legal. Is medical marijuana a good thing? We pretty much agree about that. The Albany Board of Aldermen should opt in and allow the legal sale of marijuana. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
I didn't give you the time to sign it, but if you possibly speak,
Yeah.
somebody there can find it.
Yeah.
Mayor, Board, I appreciate your time and your willingness to have this meeting.
Do you live in the city limits?
I do not.
Okay, well, the board is, their request that anybody inside the city or has a business inside the city.
I wish I had known that for my meeting. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
If you pay city school taxes, you're not allowed to speak, is that right? Even though you don't live in the city, but you pay city school taxes?
One of the two.
What about Vale not on that list?
Yeah, but does he live in the city?
He
pays
has
city
been
school
the president of Bank of New Albany for years. I
And he
mean, I
pays
think
city
that
school
should
tax.
give him the right.
I mean, that's just a little respectful there, isn't it? A man that's tied his whole life up in the city of New Albany, right next door to City Hall.
Man, do you want to speak?
If he wishes, yeah.
You hear me, Jerry?
We gotta give everybody else the opportunity.
Let him speak.
Okay.
I won't brag on
Thank you, Board. I'll let Mr. Whit go ahead.
Thank y'all, and thank you, Board. We got so many things to be proud of. We've been blessed, this town's been blessed, and I'll be real brief. You heard all the good points, all the bad points. So it looked to me like it'd be a toss-up. Why don't we opt out? We've always opt back in after we see the mistakes others have made. So, and as far as the economy, I think it'll cost the town money. I live outside in the community, but New Albany is my home. I spent, 60-something years working here. All y'all have been good to me. You blessed me in the bank, and we've always had good board members, and all I can say is good things. And look at this facility. Look at our reputation now as a place to visit and enjoy yourself, and our ballparks, and this goes on and on. I remember the mayor, Mr. Knox. He was the first mayor when I came here to work, and now we got Tim. Y'all all did good, and I know you got a big responsibility, but I know you'll handle it and pray about it, and let's do what's right. I 100% agree that it'd be good for Terry and Scott. I mean, they can get a card and get medical marijuana, but I believe it'll cost our
town money instead of making money. So thank y'all, I appreciate it. I got good memories about this place, because when I came in tonight, I told Carly, Lawrence there, I said, well, this is where I found my wife 65 years ago. On Saturday night, I'd catch a ride with Mr. Claude Barkley, which is Jimmy Barkley's and connected with parks and all, to ride down here to go to the movie. And that was a great event. I get to hold her hand and go home that night. So this is a place that means a lot to me, and y'all have done all of that. Thank y'all.
All right, Michael, next. Jeff, you're the only one left if you want to speak.
Me?
Yes. No, I mean after Michael, our mayor of Cannabis.
Thank you. I'm here as a private citizen tonight with 2 of the 3 conditions that Dr. Scott mentioned that would be helped by medical marijuana. As Mr. Kitchen said, earlier this year, Mississippi became the 37th state in the union to establish a medical cannabis program. Mississippi entrepreneurs and industry professionals from other states are investing huge amounts of money across the state now to get this program started. Opting in will bring construction jobs, retail jobs, commercial space rentals, and utility customers, in addition to the sales tax these businesses will generate. You'll also draw patients from Tippah and Pontotoc counties that have opted out to shop here. New Albany is the 10th largest city in the state that is still out. All the larger cities but Greenwood are part of a major metropolitan area, either DeSoto County, on the coast, or in the Jackson metro area. New Albany is by far the largest city under 10,000 population not to opt in yet. That means that every other town that you compete with for retailers, for chain restaurants, sports tournaments, tourism, and retirees has already said yes to medical cannabis. Opting in will make New Albany the only source for patients coming to use the Tranglefoot Trail. Approved patients in New Albany and Union County will soon have safe access to their medicine. Will you let them buy it here in New Albany, or will you send them and their tax dollars to Tupelo or Oxford? I hate to compare a plant to a dangerous drug like alcohol, but the parallels are clear. New Albany has grown considerably since going wet. The tax dollars and jobs that were going to Lee, Lafayette, and Marshall counties are now staying here in New Albany. You face that same decision tonight. Polling shows legalizing medical cannabis is very popular across the U.S., with opposition the highest among conservatives over 65 years old. Younger generations are overwhelmingly in favor of this. Board, I ask, don't let yesterday's fears and prejudices prevent tomorrow's growth. Please vote to opt in. Thank you for your time and for letting me speak.
Thank you, Mike. Jeff, you're the lone man on the list, I think. Nobody put an address down except one, so I don't know who lives in the city and who don't. This may have been intentional, I don't know.
Okay.
Jeffy, what you supposed
They want them at full pitch.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, you got me on 3 minutes. So I'm going to pray for a miracle, you know. Terry, I appreciate what you had to say. Terry's a great church member at Bethlehem, and I was there when he got shot, and so that was tragic for all of us. And, may God bless you and continue to give you help. And I'm very thankful for the board when you guys pray. You know, that just doesn't happen. I think that's part of our uniqueness as New Albany, that we have a board that can come together and pray. So I just want to speak to the board just for 3 minutes. First of all, the people that need medical marijuana, you're not keeping them from getting it by opting out. They're going to get it, okay? They may have to go to Blue Springs. So if you vote, you know, we're going to opt out. You're not going to change any of their life. They're going to continue to get the stuff that they need. So there's 4 things that will happen if we opt in, okay? And somebody will say, well, you don't have statistics on that, but I am street smart because I've been a pastor for 19 years and I've dealt with a lot of people's problems. There are 4 things that happen. The first thing that's going to happen, or one thing, there's a lot of people going to get medical marijuana cards that don't need it. It's going to happen. Now somebody out here may say, oh man, that's not going to happen. It's going to happen, okay? So that's going to move the needle. that's going to move the needle for possible addiction and abuse. It moves the needle. The second thing that's going to happen is there's going to be people who have a legit card that's going to get some medical marijuana, whichever, gummies or Hulk tablets, and they're going to share that with people that don't need it. It's going to happen. There's no doubt. I mean, I think most everybody in this room, I like the way my brother was asking questions. Back when I was in high school and college, if somebody had a six-pack of beer and somebody didn't have a beer, what were we doing? Hey, man, here, take one, okay? That's going to happen. So it will be sharing. Let's not kid ourselves. That's going to do what? Move the needle. The other thing that's going to happen is, and I know a lot of people say, well, that's not going to happen. It's going to be regulated, but it will happen. There will be leaks within the store itself, okay? There will be some medical marijuana that is able to be dispensed to the community illegally. And again, I can prove that because, I'm telling off on myself as a pastor. So how many people in here was able to get alcohol underage at a store? Point made. Point made. That's going to happen. And what does that do? That moves the needle yet again in the wrong direction. And the fourth thing, I think, and Mr. Vance kind of hit on it, we have a uniqueness in New Albany that is awesome. We have good race relations. We have good police departments, good board. But if cannabis shops start showing up on every corner, that's going to change. Our uniqueness as New Albany will not be the same. Alderman, you got a hard job here, and you're in a leadership position, and leaders make the right decision. If the right decision is to increase revenue, then it's something you got to think about. But if the right decision is to keep the needle from moving, and it may be the needle for your child or grandchild, or your brother or your sister, if it keeps that needle from moving, I think that's what I would do as a leader, and take the hard choice. It may be hard for some and not for others, but we live in a society that's going downhill all the time, and if we can pause that needle, I think that's the right thing to do as a leader. So I'm not going to quote you any sermon or any scripture or anything like that. I just want you to know that the things that I said will certainly happen, and the needle moves.
Thank y'all for being so civil. Wow, man, everybody gets a hand clap whether you're for it or against. That's all. Great job.
Mayor, I didn't get here in time to sign up either, but thank God these people here elected me. I got office.
You just can't follow directions.
You and I worked drugs together many years ago. We call people selling cocaine, selling the field. One problem I have with this marijuana is the amount. 3 ounces. Chief knows, you know from your experience, 1 ounce is a felony. On certain warrants, you have to stop. You're going to get 3 times that amount. 3 ounces per one. I think that preacher hit the nail on the head. They're going to sell it. They're not going to smoke it all of it. They're going to sell some of it. It's going to happen. Everybody's not honest. I wish it was. Me and Chris would have a job at work. They're not. The amount, and I was there when Mr. Jones was shot. I'm certainly sympathetic. I don't want people to think I'm not. I am. But I think it should have been in the drugstore. I think the state messed up. I don't think these stores selling, that's going to normalize it to our children, grandchildren. They're going to grow up thinking, well, It's always been here, so it's okay. That's what they do. This is twisted, man. It's not the real deal. As Scott touched on the guns, that is a federal law. You're supposed to, when you're doing your checklist, the last one's the question. So if you're using a governmental marijuana card, you're not supposed to have a gun. So a lot of people didn't realize that. I think when Mississippi voted, they didn't know all that, or it would have been different. Sure, the bill passed, House Bill 585 passed it.
Yes, sir.
I went to the Capitol, I thought I was gonna get arrested. It passed unanimously. Was it good for Mississippi? Check. It moved everything. Grand larceny went from $250 when I started. House Bill 585 moved it to $1,000. Checks. You go to Walmart, still a big screen TV right now every day for the rest of your life. Never be convicted of that. It passed. Was it good? You answer that. Is that good for rural Mississippi? Possession of meth went from 30 years, if it's a certain amount, to a misdemeanor. Is that good? I don't think so. So every bill that passes, just because it passed, don't mean it's good.
Yeah.
Everything that happens is not good. So anyway, thank you for allowing, I want somebody from law enforcement to speak. And I want you to know that I hope and pray that you will opt out, stay opted out. I don't see how they got this thing where you can get in and never ever get out. But you know, once you get in, you're stuck. Why they worded like that? That there's some twisted stuff going on, and I pray and ask that the chief law enforcement of the county will opt out.
Okay, we got Mr. Ken Newberger, who is Executive Director of the Mississippi Medical Marijuana Association. And I don't know if he helped author the bill, but he can explain what he did.
Hi, like you said, I'm Ken Newberger. I'm the Executive Director of the Mississippi Medical Marijuana Association. I'm here representing the industry of the state. I thank all of you guys for having me. I think it's been said a few times that this is a very civil discussion. I've been to a lot of these meetings. This is actually the most civil discussion of all of them. So I think y'all really do have something special in New Albany. I want to address just a couple of the misconceptions about the industry at large, and then also some of the stuff that was said tonight. The number one thing that I've heard is that this is an all-cash business. While cash is certainly part of it, there are banks in the state, across the state, who are banking this, that have organized systems to keep it cashless as much as possible, and that way you don't have to actually bring giant sums of money to the bank. They're actually allowing you to transfer it. Another thing that I hear a lot is the security. That's certainly something that has been seen in other states, is the problem with security. I'm not the person that's going to say everything's going to go great the entire time with this industry. I know some people will tell you that it's panacea and it's great. It's not. It's a normal industry that needs to be regulated. Our security standards in this state are higher than every other state. We require on-site guards. This is from the Department of Revenue, not actually in the bill. This is the regulations that we put out. They require on-site guards 24/7. It requires 24/7 surveillance that law enforcement has access to see. That has to be maintained in an off-site storage place for footage to be viewed 4 months, dating 4 months back from when the footage was taken. So it's got a lot of oversight to make sure that if anything does ever go wrong, the tools are there to make sure that we can go out and find the bad actors. The big things that people ask about is like, what about the people who don't have cards? Well, one of the things that's in the bill that a lot of people don't talk about is that within 6 months of getting a card as a patient, you have to go back to your certifier for a follow-up to make sure that it is working. Should that practitioner decide that it's not, your card gets revoked. But I'd like to address with a lot of the stuff that has been said tonight is I obviously would like you guys to opt in. This is not my town. I can't tell you how to decide the rule of law in this town should go. But thank you for having me. I just would like to point out that, as someone said tonight, this should not be about the money. And if you listened to the people who talked tonight, the people who were against opting in were talking about don't be dissuaded by the money, and the people who were for it are patients who are asking you to give them the avenues right here at home to get it. So I think that's something that you should be considering, is that the patients who actually would qualify are the people asking you to opt in. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, I guess I'll ask the board, what's the will, they want to vote tonight, or, we did an offer, what do y'all want to do?
Mr. Mayor, well, before we start that, and that's not traditional, I say anything for the board unless it's you. But I've been asked by several folks here to ask my opinion on this. So, just give me 3 minutes, I'll give you my opinion. And unlike the sheriff, Jim and I have been in this almost 25 years serving this. I tell you before that, since the age of 18, I've been serving this community either a volunteer fireman or a policeman or a sheriff's deputy. My whole adult life has been serving this community one capacity or another. I can tell you also that I've seen more change in the last 5 years in my profession than we did the 25 before that. I can also tell you that we're short officers now, but that's just not me, that's nationwide. Everybody's short employees. I heard Mike Kirk say he's short workers. But having folks, the difference is that having people who actually want to be police or law enforcement now are far and few between. Very few people want to pick up the banner because they want to serve actually. They're going to be looking for different incentives from this point forward. I'll tell you, in 2014, I went to FBI Command College. And basically it was at least 15-year veterans. There was probably 200 law enforcement officers. It was a command school, basically on leadership and all different technique. Right after I was elected chief of police, I went there as assistant chief, and I was like him. And we were in a room with all these other officers. It was at the University of Mississippi. It was a Coliseum type classroom. And one of the speakers that got up and spoke was a guy I knew who worked for the NBN and had worked for several years. And I'd worked with him, knew him from some other things we'd done as far as career-wise. And he got up and spoke. And by the time he got up to speak, at the very top of the stairs, or the very top of the Coliseum classroom, trustee came in to dump the garbage. Well, he stopped what he was doing. So every law enforcement, 200 people looked around what was going on. When he left the room, he said, now continue. He said, what I'm about to tell you is going to be hard for you to hear. He said, I can assure you it's going to happen before I retire. Well, Bobby retired last year. And what he told us was that before I retire, the state of Mississippi will become legal for marijuana. Now you can imagine, 15 years, most of the folks in this whole class I was in were all gray-headed. And you can imagine the grumbling and the shifting of the seats. And there's no way. There's no way. Well, it's come to pass. And in progression, what I will tell you is that there will be more things that come into play. Now, it's up to completely up to the board how they handle it. It's not anything to do with me. I have to handle how we enforce it after they decide to make a decision. But we don't have the manpower, we don't have the extra stuff to handle any potential problems that could be coming in because of this. Now, I was in a conversation with a gentleman who had a child She was a child. She was in kindergarten. She was diagnosed with cancer. You don't think I'm making this up, it's honest to God truth. He had a child with cancer, a gentleman that had cancer, and a guy that I knew that had a sibling that died of cancer who had to be one of my classmates, along with another law enforcement officer. And it was really interesting to see all their different point of views about this. But what was all, and what we all said here, or most everyone has said here, nobody has a problem with people who need medical marijuana. Nobody has a problem with that. I believe you should be able to get it. Now we can argue about the introduction of how it happens. Personally, I believe that you can get THC, which is the content, which is the part of marijuana that gives you the medicinal effect, makes you higher or eats you, or whatever the case may be, depending on the illness you have. THC content's where it's at. Well, they got pills, they got gummies, they got oils, they got vapes. There's multiple ways to induce it to your body other than just smoking marijuana. It's probably more efficient. That's not, I'm a simple man, I'm not getting in an argument. All I'll say is that we don't need any more additional problems than we already have, as far as my opinion goes, for what I have to look out for on a day-to-day basis and what I have to contend with as far as what potential crimes coming in. Anything that brings added problem in the community or potential added problem to I know, I'm going to be against it pretty much. So I do want to, like Brother Jeff here said, when the board said this, the board and I were very concerned about how this was going to go. The city of New Albany and the citizens of the county, Union County citizens, are being commended about how civil this is going down. I can't thank you enough personally for myself how you have handled yourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, what's the will of the board? Or,
I just wanted to address the audience if I could.
Sure.
I've been very impressed by everybody speaking tonight. I've been impressed by your points, which have been logical, and I've been impressed with the civility, which has been mentioned before. This is not something that we're rushing into. We've delayed this decision for 3 months now. And I wanted to, comment on a few things that I heard. I heard the comment, pot shop on every corner. If the board were to decide to opt in, there's not going to be a pot shop on every corner. We have very strict regulations as a part of our Albany Next plan if we were to opt in. A dispensary can't be within 1,000 feet of a church, a school, can't be within 250 feet of a residential area. There's very limited places in town where a dispensary could even be. And if we were to opt in, we're going to be lucky if even one business decides to invest in a dispensary because of our demographics. We have a pretty low population for what these businesses are looking for. Also, many of the problems mentioned are already problems. You mentioned sharing marijuana. Well, a lot of people buy and sell marijuana in town right now, whether it's legal or not. You mentioned, well, just let them go to Tupelo. Well, someone who needs this is going to be severely inconvenienced by that. Their caretaker is going to be driving 30 minutes away when potentially they could buy it here in town. Chris mentioned the police department doesn't need any more potential problems. Well, I agree, I don't want any more potential problems, but the same could have been said about alcohol when we voted it in. It brings potential problems, yes, but it also brings growth. And making alcohol illegal in Union County did not prevent anyone from buying it. It only gave that revenue to Tupelo and to Oxford and inconvenienced responsible people. As Mr. Witt said, there's benefits and drawbacks to both sides, but in the end, all we would be doing by opting out is we'd be inconveniencing people like Terry, like Scott, who are not the only people who have reached out to me who need this, but they're the ones who have the courage to give a personal testimony about how it's helped them. In my opinion, there's no good reason to inconvenience them. I don't see anything in this bill that suggests there's going to be a pot shop on every corner. It is certainly medicinal in nature. There's nothing in this bill that suggests recreation, as Ms. Harrington says. And so it's my opinion that we should opt in. That it is an opportunity for the city. And my main concern is with people that have reached out to me who have said that they need it. And going out of our way to inconvenience these law-abiding citizens who will be buying responsibly. If you want marijuana illegally, it's available. And the problem of sharing, well, that's already a problem with prescribed medicine. Opioids were prescribed by doctors, and yes, they were shared. So there's going to be problems, yes, but there's already problems. Why would we limit our growth opportunity and inconvenience law-abiding citizens? I can't see the wisdom in that.
Anybody else?
My opinion is that we need to, as the citizens and the mayor and board of this city, to not table this anymore. Stop looking past it. Opt out, and let's not opt back in.
The devil has been a liar from the beginning. When he walked up with Adam and Eve and told her what he did, he's a liar. And if you believe what he's saying now, you, as a Bible college, are a fool. Because I don't mean anything but this to you, but he's a liar, he's always a liar. And this will do nothing but blow out.
One thing that I do want everyone in this room to understand too is whichever way this vote goes tonight, this is not a decision that was taken lightly. It was not anything that was rushed. Every man on this board I've spoken to individually, and we have prayed about it. I've spoken with my pastor about it, and he prayed with me. So I want everyone to understand that this is something that was taken from every angle and every possible outcome into consideration.
Thank you, Marks. Thank you, Drew, and thank you, Kevin Dale, for your comments. I would reiterate what they've said, that believe me, I've had a number of conversations with a number of people in this room. There might be 5 men in New Albany I respect as much as I respect Mr. Vance Witt. Miss Mary Tate Powell, I grew up with one of her boys, and she's like really special to me, okay? So this is something that it kind of like it went for, when it first came up, nobody ever said a word about it. And then all of a sudden, people started calling and the conversation started happening. So I started doing my research. And the first thing to me that is important to remember here, and whether you say that they were confused or whatever, the original vote is in this town, the people of New Albany voted for this, okay? We as a government, as it relates to our country or our state, if we the people vote for something, we don't want the government going to change it, okay? So it was voted on. Now I know that that was overruled in the Supreme Court, and we have a Senate bill that was more restrictive than what the people voted on. And then the people that we sent to Jackson as a state overwhelmingly voted to support this. My point is we represent the people of the New Albany. And again, if it was voted on, my thing is tonight, we were having a public hearing, and believe me, you guys, I'm so proud of Parks and Group for both having comments to say where they stand, and obviously I knew Kevin Dale would, but my point is, if we would have had this public hearing tonight, and then we sit up here, because believe me, we've had a bunch of conversations about this. This is not something that we just came here tonight and we're going to listen to what y'all say and say, okay, what are we going to vote? This is something we've had a lot of conversations about. And if we would have had this public hearing and we sit up here and voted without saying something to you and you left and we voted for it, that just wouldn't have been right, okay? I want you to understand that this is not something we take lightly. And to say they can go to Blue Springs, look, we are New Albany, okay? And we are a great town. We are a growing town. But why do we have to have that attitude, let them go somewhere else? Because from what I understand and what I've read, this will be very regulated. This isn't going to stop our problems we have with marijuana or any other drugs. It'll still happen. It'll just give people like Scott and Terry the opportunity. So I had a conversation with somebody that has an illness, and their comment to me was, so what if I get so debilitated and I only have one caregiver and I need it? Do they drive to Tupelo, or do they drive to Oxford, or for that matter, Blue Springs? The bottom line is, this is not something that we take lightly. This is something that we have put a lot of thought into. And again, from the financial standpoint of it, I will tell you that we did some research. We did a comparison on one building. One building. And again, there's been several comments about it not being financial. At the end of the day, it's partly financial. It's going to always have something to do with finance. We did a study on one building, if it was a growth facility versus what it had been. And that one facility for 1 year was worth $250,000 to us. That one facility.
How?
From an electrical standpoint, what they had paid the old tenant versus what the new tenant would pay. And I don't want to start an argument here, Scott, but
There's no argument.
I mean,
there's no argument. But you've mentioned Scott and Terry specifically. Well, by their own admission tonight, they're not having trouble getting it. They just told you tonight that they're using it. Terry told you using it every day.
that's correct. They are. They do have access, but it's illegal.
You can possess it legally. Legally. You can get it legally right now.
I don't get where you're going with that.
Okay, well, look.
Let's wait a minute.
I'm just saying.
Well,
All I want to ask is, I know that y'all are not worried about the medical part, and I'm not worried about the medical dispensaries as much as I am. When this goes recreational, your medical dispensaries are going to become hot shots. You can't opt out when it goes recreational. We're out. You won't have it. And it's going to go recreational. The average time of the states that have voted in medical marijuana right now before they go recreational for 3 years.
Your senator can tell you it's already being discussed.
And reverend.
Just because he put it in this bill doesn't mean it's not in Jackson.
So what about the people that voted for it? I mean,
let me say this.
Hang on just a minute, folks. Hang on just a minute. Here's where we're at as far as, here's where we're at. Here's a part of my job, that's one of the reasons I'm here. At this point, I think everyone has had an opportunity that wanted to speak, has been able to speak, and that was on the list. I think all arguments have been heard. Now we can have spin-off arguments, which is neither here nor there. I think everybody's heard the basis of the issue. At this time, it's up to the board and the mayor to direct how it goes. If we have another alderman that wants to speak, I think it's...
One more. All right, Keith, I just want to come in on what you mentioned, that the people voted for this. Nowhere on that ballot did it mention selling or growing in our community. It was for medical marijuana, which is it's legal. Scott, Terry, I'm sympathetic, and I'm glad that y'all were able to get it. But that's not what was voted on. They voted, and it passed. They were legal. Can use it. I don't think it's best for New Albany to opt in. I think that we should pass this. We can always, as we can go on all night, but we can always, at a later date, look at opting in. But right now, we can opt out. We're already out. We don't have to do anything.
Could you not stay opted out and put it on the ballot in November and let the people in the city of New Albany vote on it?
I don't know that we can do that. I don't know that we can do that, but there is an option for citizens to get a petition if we stay opted out. But citizens can do
That's
that.
the opt-in.
Correct.
But is there any way that the citizens of New Albany could actually vote on it in something that they can understand? Not like the bill that was written and we voted on earlier, which we got doctors and nurses that didn't understand. They thought it was going to be coming through pharmacies. I know pharmacists that thought they were going to be prescribing it. So if they didn't understand it, to me, that would be the safest thing. Let the citizens of New Albany vote on it.
I don't think we can do that, but Reagan, you may can answer that. But I'm going to make the motion to approve the New Albany Next Comprehensive Plan, removing the cannabis from that plan, and then remain. So we're already opted out. We don't have to do anything to stay opted out. So that's my motion.
Let me, just one point of order there. We have this NA next set for a public hearing. We may not have any comments because it's our second day to do so. So I think it may be premature to make a motion until they have the option to speak on the NA next as well, which we'll do next. If you want to open it up to the public to speak on NA next.
This tonight is not on NA next.
It's on there for two different things, and it was voted on two different things last month. So right now, cannabis is opting in as the first issue. NA next is next, and I assume Mr. Barber may have something to say. The public hearing was continued, so it's still open. And I just, I want to make sure that they do have an option to speak on NA next if they want to.
Okay. Bob, you got any comment? I think everybody probably understands, next.
I got no comment.
Okay, has anybody here got any questions about the NA Next comprehensive plan? Yes, sir. No, that's for New Albany Next.
Is there a way for some people that are putting this out here and they get in the basement with some high blood? Marijuana is a stepping stone to something more powerful. And that has been the history of marijuana. This is just the start. And then they lace it with fentanyl. How many of our young people are going to be killed out here because of it?
All right, anybody here concerned with the New Albany Next, which that's our comprehensive plan, that has any comments?
Hey, Reagan, do we not need to, I'm sorry, do we not need to vote on whether to opt in or out of marijuana before we discuss New Albany Next? I thought that was the point of this meeting.
I don't think you're limited from opening the next matter for discussion if that's what you prefer to do before you vote, but it was the item on the agenda that we were dealing with was cannabis. So it's up to the board how it wants to do it.
Well, I would like to make a motion if I can. I didn't know if Will's motion is standing or how that works.
Well, it hasn't been seconded, so it's still just kind of hanging there. I just wanted to make sure that I didn't think it was appropriate to do any motion on New Albany Next until the audience had an opportunity to speak on it.
Are we separating opting out on the cannabis and New Albany Next? We're separating these two votes?
There are separate votes. One would be opting in. You don't have to vote to opt out because we're already out.
Right.
And then-
But I know
and
the
then
last
there's-
meeting
be
they
a
were
separate vote.
together, and we wanna make sure there's some.
Well, right now, we need to hear from anybody that has a comment on New Albany Next.
What is New Albany? Yeah.
New Albany Next is our new zoning ordinance, which has been out there for months too. And,
New Albany Next has cannabis in it.
That, yeah, they know.
yeah, there's.
All we need is anybody that's got a comment on New Albany Next, which is our comprehensive zoning.
Where will the medical dispensaries on the drug facilities be allowed in New Albany under your New Albany Next program?
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Answer the. So, the New Albany Next was a comprehensive planning process that the city engaged in over a period of about a year and a half. And one of the recommendations of the planning process was a comprehensive update to the city's zoning code. And that's what's before the board tonight. It's been studied, been available, studied by the Planning Commission, and been before the board for several months. Really the only comments we've gotten have been related to the cannabis provisions, which is the second item you've discussed tonight. So as it stands now, the question was, first of all, the cannabis provisions are written into the zoning ordinance as it stands at the moment in the draft. And you asked where the dispensaries were proposed to be located, and I'll just speak in general terms. They would be excluded from the commercial areas, downtown, and other commercial areas, with the exception of what's classified as the suburban commercial area, which is generally the sort of Walmart type major heavy-duty commercial areas in the community. That's the way it's written.
What's like the drug facility?
Reagan, at our last meeting.
Where was the grow facility? Where were they going to be allowed?
Industrial areas.
Agriculture.
Industrial and agriculture.
Reagan, at our last meeting, the question was asked by one of our aldermen if this opting in or out, we could accept the New Albany Next plan without the marijuana being in it. And you answered that was possible to do that. Is that correct?
Yes. They chose to not avoid the issue and address them all at the same time, rather than keep doing it piecemeal. But yes, they absolutely passed it without marijuana aspects.
Why is downtown New Albany being excluded from shops, from marijuana shops? It has
Because
great
they're
New Albany,
residential.
why is downtown being excluded?
Well, 1,000 feet from a church, 250 feet from any residential would exclude all downtown.
It's also child daycare centers, church, school.
Church.
There's apartments all downtown, so that would exclude.
One right there at the end of the Tallahatchie Bridge across the Farm Bureau, that's more than 1,000 feet from the church.
Yep.
I think that's more than 250 feet from a residence. I mean,
1,000.
they can own it, why couldn't it be there?
That may be 50. Yeah, that's.
Can we put it there?
Do what?
Can we put it there, break it on it?
Well, I think they can't be within 1,500 feet of each other, so
Well, look up.
25 maybe.
No, it's 1,500 feet in the law.
From each other?
It's Senate Bill
Yeah, I
2095.
think it's
It
1,500
can't be any closer
They're already
than
from
15.
2,500 to 1,500, the second iteration.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
About a third of a mile.
We've discussed this. I think it's time to put it to a vote. The New Albany Next plan has been made public.
Will's already made the motion.
Okay.
Well, we want to make sure, we want to understand, are you voting on the New Albany Next and the marijuana, or are you separating it?
So, the motion that was put forward, which as soon as the discussion is over, we'll proceed on, because I think it addresses everything, is to, was by will, it was made to pass New Albany Next, as it was written and proposed, and with all the fixes that were added to it, with the marijuana aspects left out, which would kind of imply that they're not choosing to opt in. Right now, you have a motion. You won't have a vote unless there's a second to that motion, and we'll get to that shortly.
Okay, we're actually supposed to have a motion and a second before discussion, but we got a motion by Will to accept New Albany Next and exclude medical marijuana. Is that how you motion? All right, to have a second.
I want the motion to be made that we get that.
Well, you can deal with the motion. First of all, you can't do that.
Union County did theirs to the next board is elected.
Something that would restrict later boards. So we might have the ability to restrict 2 years you have left of this board, but you can't restrict later.
Okay, so if we opt out now, are we saying we're going back in 6 months, is that what we're saying as a board?
You saying anything, yeah. You already opted out. You can opt back in again.
Well, what Will did was motion to accept the Next.
So, Reagan,
Let me get a second first.
if you motion.
All right, we got a second, Kevin Dale. Now, any other questions or discussion?
Like, so Reagan, you and I had this discussion earlier. If we, New Albany Next has the cannabis in it, right?
There's
So
the
if we're-
current draft.
The current draft has it.
Mostly just definitions, and then the one.
Say what now?
Mostly just some definitions, and then there's the one restriction of to keep it away from houses.
Will's motion, as stated, as I understand it, would not mean we're opting out of medical marijuana. His motion would mean that the regulations we have in place would be removed.
Right.
That's the way it's stated.
I think that motion really only makes sense if you're not going to opt in, but,
We would have to have a separate vote to opt out.
That's where I was going with my question, right? So if Will's motion is approved, I don't understand how it can be approved if we're not opted in.
So if his motion is approved and you do not then vote to opt in, then it's all done. If you were to vote to opt in after his motion was passed, then you would have an issue of having to reopen NA Next at a later date to add marijuana aspects to it, or cannabis restrictions.
So what is the NA Next minus the cannabis?
It's the new zoning, which has been talked about in various boards, plus meetings for about 1.5 years.
Yeah.
It's basically just updating our zoning laws to be, promote growth and to bring them up to date. They're very old and outdated as they are.
We do.
Well, you have a motion.
All right. Now, the motion and the second was to approve New Albany Next without the cannabis. Am I right, Will, Kevin? All right. We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed?
No.
Okay, motion fails. Okay, anybody else want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make a motion that the city opt in for allowing medical cannabis as described in Senate Bill 2095 and signed by Governor Tate Reeves, opting in for the cultivation, processing, sale, and distribution of medical cannabis, effective immediately.
Okay, we have a motion to opt in. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Drew. Any questions or discussion?
So, Parks made the motion, Senate bill, in New Albany Next, specifically, we talk about 250 feet.
We'll have to get to that afterwards. If this is approved, then we have to do it. Well, next, because it hasn't even passed.
So we're just opting in.
The only thing pending right now is the question of opting in.
Okay.
Okay, we got a motion, a second. All in favor? Any opposed?
I think you all that as far as stand up, if you're that far.
Yeah, if y'all are just going by people that are for it or against it, I think it's overwhelming. We're against it. We're all.
That motion carried.
Yeah. The minutes will show.
How convenient for us that you excluded your father's business from having cannabis next door to him.